I'm Heather Brannon. I work with AgSouth Farm Credit, and we are so excited that you were interested in joining us today for our educational webinar on marketing for modern farmers. As a cooperative, Farm Credit is not a traditional bank. We specialize in loans for farmers and rural landowners, and part of our mission to support agriculture in rural America is to invest in the future of our farmers and your farming operations. So we are offering some educational opportunities, including this webinar that you've joined this morning, as a way to help you better manage and sell your product. So we know that as farmers, you are really great at knowing how to grow things and raise livestock. But selling it can be a challenge, and knowing how to reach those consumers is a skill set that most of us are not taught. So we wanted to bring in an expert in this area to help you better look at how you're marketing and selling your products, and hopefully generate some new ideas for how you can better reach your consumer market. So we're excited to bring in Rick, and so I'd like for Lily to introduce him for us today.
Good morning.
Before we start too, I'll say that we're going to save questions for the end. So if there's a chat in here, so if you have a question during Rick's presentation and want to drop it in the chat, we'll circle back to all of those a little later in his presentation. So, all right, Lily.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Lily Player. I'm an intern this summer with AgSouth. I wanted to take a minute to introduce everyone to our speaker, Rick Harrison. Rick is the founder and CEO of Farm Trader, a platform that helps connect local farmers with customers and wholesale buyers. He is a UNC grad with an MBA from Wake Forest, and he's passionate about helping farmers grow their business through smart modern marketing. We are so excited to have him here with us today, so get ready to learn some new ideas for marketing your farm in today's world. With all that being said, I'll pass it to you.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate you all having me on. It's a pleasure to be able to have the opportunity to kind of talk with you all about some of the things that are important in getting your brand and products in front of customers. I'll start with a quick background of me and like why I'm the one talking to you all about this. So as Lillian said, I got a degree in biology from UNC, which seems unrelated, but we'll circle back to that in just a little bit, I promise. After that, I enlisted in the Army and used that as a springboard into an MBA program with Wake Forest. While I was there, I ended up working for a tech startup out of Silicon Valley, Skydio, which is a company that sells autonomous drones to military and first responders. And I was responsible for the Southeast during that time. And that is really where I started to get a good understanding for the importance of being able to create a narrative around the importance of a product, and importance of a new product that people weren't educated on, and how branding and a solid story and customer engagement are the things that really drive results at the end of the day. I was fortunate enough during my time there to do well enough to be able to step away. And while we were doing that, my wife and I were running a horse boarding facility. We also had pretty much every other animal that you can think of, and had a big garden and all of that stuff. And so one of the things that became a pretty consistent issue for us was being able to find a way to consistently get hay from a local supplier. And a Google search led me absolutely nowhere. And I realized that that same type of process could be extrapolated out to virtually every other product that you want to buy directly from a farm on the internet. There's no easy way to do that. And so that is what led to Farm Trader. Be more than happy to talk with you all about that in more detail if you're interested. This webinar is going to be much more holistic about your entire marketing process. We'll dive in a little bit to selling on online marketplaces. And then down here at the right on the left is my wife, Mariah. holding our son James, and then Isaac, our other oldest son, is with me. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to start with kind of why it matters, what's important, why does it work, and then the science behind why marketing takes people from doing an action that they wouldn't otherwise do in the absence of marketing. We're going to talk through some different promotion strategies, some basic foundations for marketing, understanding your customer base and who your ideal target is. And then I would like to spend some time on like branding and digital marketing presence as well. And like I said before, you can put any questions that you have in the end of the chat. And if we don't get to them, my contact information will be shared as well. You're more than welcome to reach out. So why does marketing matter for farmers? So in a lot of ways, farmers and farms seem to operate outside of typical business structure in a lot of ways when it comes to like how we sell and how we market our products. And I think that part of the reason for that, to a certain degree, stems from, this is something that we do because we love it. We do it because we're passionate about it, and we're not necessarily here to make a ton of money while we're farming. And be that as it may, the reality is that each and every single one of us are entrepreneurs. We are small business owners. And so we need to behave and plan as such. And so what marketing is able to do for you is get you in front of the right customers so that you're able to consistently increase sales and profits. You're able to build a loyal customer base that keeps coming back time and time again. And then most importantly, it allows you to compete effectively. I'll talk about competition a little bit more later on, but the reality is, as farmers, specifically if we're selling direct to consumer, right, we're up against a pretty hefty competition base, be that your local retailers. When people are looking for groceries, some of the first things that come to mind are places like Walmart, Sam's Club, Harris Teeter, the list goes on. And those are the companies that are top of mind for your average consumer. And so how do we break into that and become relevant when people are thinking about where to get their products and foods from? And so that's kind of what we're going to dive into today. But really, it's why marketing is so important for us is because we have to be able to compete and stay top of mind in people's buying processes. So like I promised I would, I'll circle back to the science part of it. I really like digging into why marketing creates a reaction from people, and like what is it about a good story that gets people engaged. And it really boils down to three things. It boils down to grabbing their attention, building trust with them over time, and then creating simple actions for them to follow once that trust is created. So step number one is to grab people's attention. And you can do this in a multitude of ways. You see people do it successfully via social media. If you think about some of the commercials that stick in your mind, why are those there? They elicited some sort of emotional response by you, be that, it was funny, it made you mad, it made you happy. All of those things make your marketing and other companies' marketing stick with their customers in a much longer way. And so how can you create a scenario where what it is that you're creating stands out from the pack? Be that, you're posting pictures of your farm in a unique way. You're telling a story behind what it is that you're doing. Anything that you can do to grab people's attention and keep them engaged with you is key number one. After that, what you want to be able to do is build trust. And the way that you build trust is through repetition. So the more that you see something, the more familiar you are with it, and the more you expect it to be there, right? So like if you go on a long road trip, you expect there to be a McDonald's at some point down the road that you're going to see a logo from, right? And so the idea is to show up in as many different places and ways as you possibly can, so that people become familiar with you, people become familiar with your brand, and they begin to trust it as a reputable source of whatever goods that they are looking for. So the ability to stay top of mind through consistent repetition gets people to expect you to be there and keeps you top of mind when they're looking for goods in the future. And the last step is, once you have their attention, you want to make the action process as simple as possible and as clear as possible. So you grabbed their attention, you're consistently in front of them. Now they want to buy from you, right? And so what steps can you remove from that process to eliminate any sort of buyer withdrawal, right? You want to make it as simple as possible for them to be able to give you money. And so some of the ways that you can do that are some of the digital selling techniques that we're going to talk about later, showing up consistently at whichever farmers markets, if you go to those that you decide to choose from. And then if you're looking more at a wholesale route, what ways can you differentiate yourself to make the buying process as seamless as possible? The whole purpose of this is to reduce the number of steps that it takes for the person to be able to make that purchase. The fewer steps that there are in that process, the more likely they are to go through with it. And so to kind of summarize how this works from a consumer standpoint, is that you get their attention, you get some sort of emotional response from them. You wind up building trust through them seeing your content over and over and over again. And then once they're ready to pull the trigger, you have a very easy pathway for them to be able to complete that purchase. And so that leads us into understanding your market and your customers. And so one of the most important things that you can do from the get-go is to understand which market fits you best. Which market are you going to be able to have the most success in? Where's there a gap? So there's a few options for this as small farmers. We can look at, direct to consumer avenues like farmers markets, online sales, be that through your own website or a marketplace. There's CSA memberships now as well. Those fall into the direct to consumer pile. You can also look at wholesale buyers like restaurants, grocery stores, food hubs, and then the more institutional type buyers like hospitals, schools, government programs. And these are areas that can kind of seem a little bit more daunting to break into. But the reality is that all of them want to be able to source more high quality food for their institutions. There's this in hospitals specifically right now, right? There's this whole big movement where food is medicine, right? And we all believe that high quality food from a local source is going to inherently be better for you than food coming from elsewhere. And so the ability to be able to present yourself in that manner to these higher up institutions gives you a little bit of leverage, and not many people are doing it in that way. And so don't be afraid to just reach out and see if there is an opening where you can kind of fit in, if there's a gap that you would be able to fill with some of these institutions. So once you've narrowed down your ideal market that you want to try to enter into, once you're in that market, it's important to then define who the ideal customer within that group is. So understanding the demographics of the people who are most likely to buy from you. So if we're looking at a direct to consumer sale, right? If we're selling at a smaller scale, higher quality products, the idea then would be to target people who are less price sensitive, who are willing to forego convenience for quality in a lot of cases, And what do those customers look like? What's their ideal age, gender, income level? So if we continue down the direct consumer path, a lot of those would be, middle to middle-aged individuals with a family, wanting to provide healthy food for the families, and those typically land at the higher income brackets. And so that allows you to focus your marketing efforts to where you're going to get the most return on your investments of both time and money when you're doing these things. And then once you kind of have the demographics nailed down, it's important to dive into what it is that they care about. And the reason that you care about this is because that is how you are then able to draft a narrative around your products, your story, and how you align with the things that they care about. And that gets them engaged. And then think about too, where are they getting their food right now? Where are they getting their products now? And how can you supplement that process for them and make what it is that you offer as similar as possible to what they're already used to? Humans are a creature of habit. And so the more similarities that they're able to draw between what they're used to and what you're offering, the easier it is for them to take that step. So now we're going to jump into just a little bit of basic blocking and tackling when it comes to marketing. And it's the 4 P's of marketing. So you have product, what it is that you're selling; price, how much are you selling it for; you have place, where is it that you're going to offer it for sale; and then promotion, how are people going to know that there is something for sale by you? So we're going to dive into each one of those a little bit more. We'll start with product. And so one of the things that I think needs to be pretty well thought out is what products you're going to sell and why are you selling those products. And a good way to do this that we did, like when we were running our horse boarding facility, right? There wasn't a ton of options for a smaller scale, higher end horse boarding facility in our area. And so we kept our numbers pretty small so that we could give more attention to each individual horse that was on our property, and be able to give a little bit more catered care to those animals. And so that was the niche that we were able to find in our market. And so for everyone else, it is important to think about, what exists already. And if you are already in business, as I'm sure most of you are, what makes you stand out compared to everyone else in that marketplace? So talk about the unique attributes of your products, how they are grown, why that is special, why that differentiates you from everyone else. And then what is the value proposition that you are providing through the purchase of your products? Is it, this is healthier for you, this is easier to get, this is at a lower cost? So why is it that these products specifically are a good fit for the specific market that you're in? So when you're thinking about what products to sell, do a quick study of what is already offered in your area of interest, and then where can you fill a gap where there is one. What products are not being offered at a specific level in a specific place, and how can you adapt to be able to fit into that a little bit better? And like I said at the beginning, a lot of what we'll talk about here is pretty common sense stuff when you think about it. But I think that kind of taking the time to get a little bit more in depth with each of these items will benefit you all in the long run and keep you a little bit more nimble when you hit a roadblock, when the market conditions change, to be able to adapt to whatever's happening in your specific area. Next, we're going to talk about price. And so first and foremost, price should be a mathematical calculation. You need to understand what your costs are down to the dollar. And what I mean by that is not just the cost of supplies or the cost of seeds, but it's important to factor in your time. How much effort are you putting into each product that you have for sale, or each way that you are selling, for instance? So like if we think about farmers markets, I highly encourage everyone that's selling at a farmer's market to think about the cost that it takes to get there, the cost of fuel, and then most importantly, the time that you are there. And to caveat off of that, the opportunity cost of being there. What else could you be doing that could potentially be driving more value for you, but you can't because you're at the farmer's market? And so when we think about the things that we do in that light, we're able to be much more tactical about how we approach different selling scenarios and how we list our products in different markets. Your price should reflect your value and the value of your products. And so, if we're selling direct to consumer, we're not going to be trying to compete with the prices at Walmart, right? Because we are inherently more valuable than that. We're providing products at a much higher quality, at a lower scale, and our prices should reflect that. So what I encourage you all to do is to look at the market where you are, see what the prices are at the low end, and then see what the prices are at the high end for people buying directly from farms, and place yourself somewhere towards the higher end of that. And that same type of thinking can be translated to virtually any other market that you're looking into, whether that be wholesale. If you're looking to sell into specialty grocery stores, they understand who they're buying from. And so don't knock yourself on price if you don't absolutely have to, and if you don't have the volume to be able to make up for that. And so find a place where your price aligns with your customers' values, with the value of your products. And I urge you to start higher and see what that gets you. And then if you have to, come down from there, if that makes sense. Next, we'll talk about place. So where is it that you're selling? I talked a little bit about farmers markets, and those are kind of for a lot of smaller scale farms and small businesses selling direct to consumer. This is kind of like the easiest approach and like most top of mind way for a lot of us to sell. I will say that I am not the biggest fan of them because of the opportunity cost that I talked about later, where you're spending a lot of time and energy and money being at this one location, but in the absence of doing other things that could potentially drive more revenue and create a larger impact with a smaller effort. And so I have typically shied away from them, but when I do go to them, it's important that, when you have a market stand, that you create an environment that's engaging, to bring in the repetition side of things and building trust. Try to be at the same place every week if you are selling at a farmer's market, so that customers who come to that market frequently automatically know where to find you. They expect you to be there, and they expect to be able to easily buy from you there. I do believe that face-to-face buying experiences are important, especially in our field, where people want to be able to engage more with their food comes from. I would just encourage you to be pretty strategic about which markets you go to and why you're going there. And then once that market is over, do kind of a cost justification of that. How much did you make? How much did you spend there? How much time were you there? And be sure that you're accounting for what other efforts you could have been doing while you were there to make sure that those markets in particular are worth your time. Another way that you can sell to customers is through online shopping, be that your own website or a platform like Farm Trader or Etsy or Amazon. These are all options where you're able to get your products in front of more viewers through the just reality that a lot of people shop online for a lot of their goods now. And so we'll dive into digital marketing a little bit more later on, but it's a great way for you to be able to expand your reach at a pretty low cost. Wholesale, I touched on a few of these already. I think that there's a great opportunity, no matter where you are, to reach out to local chefs, local restaurants, and see if you can partner with them. What is it that they're looking for? What is it that they need? And how can you break into that market? Because when you do, you're able to have a much more defined sales channel that's a lot less sporadic than a direct consumer route. And it allows you to kind of be able to plan what you grow, how much you grow, or how much you produce, um, and kind of have a set idea of what those fixed costs are going to be, as well as what the net profit will be. So it makes the math equation for you all a lot simpler. Another great option that exists in a lot of states, like I'm in North Carolina, so we have a lot of food hubs. And so those are another great option for you to be able to expand your reach, kind of work through an aggregator to be able to get your products in front of more customers and to have a more steady sales pipeline. Next, we'll talk about kind of on-farm sales, and a big part of that is agritourism. I wouldn't necessarily say that I would suggest you spend all of your time running an agritourism business, but I do think that a few times a year, it is important for you to get your customers on your farm so that they're able to better engage with where their food's coming from. They're able to get an idea of what your operations are. They're able to meet you in a way that is inherently different than they ever could at a farmer's market. And so it makes it much more personal for them. They wind up having a connection with it. And it's a great way to build lasting customers and a loyal customer base. And the last one we'll talk about is local partnerships. I touched on the chefs already, but the breweries, wineries, these are another great option where you're targeting people who are at the higher end typically of the income scale and who care about, niche products. And so that's a great way to be able to market your products to a very targeted group of people. And then like health and wellness businesses are another one that I don't think are targeted quite enough. Like gyms, people who automatically are more inherently health conscious. And so how can you create some sort of partnership with these types of organizations who have already aggregated a customer base who care about the things that you offer? And so think about what a few of those are in each of your locations and just start reaching out to them. You'll probably get a lot of no's or we're not interested, but somebody is likely to say yes at some point. And so just stay persistent with it and know that all of these options are always on the table. And also that you don't have to silo yourself into one specific way of selling. I would encourage you to go through as many different avenues as you can and then see where you're getting the best returns. And when you see that you're getting better returns in one area than another, dial in your focus on that and then step back and think, why are we not performing as well in these other areas of our sales channel? And what can we do to improve those, or should we remove ourselves from those entirely because we're not able to compete effectively? And then lastly, promotion. So how are people going to know about you and your product and your brand? So the first step of this is branding. And a great way to do that is to create a very consistent logo and to have that logo show up in as many different ways and in many different places as possible. And so like, I'm sure when I say the word logo, there are several that pop into your mind immediately from companies in many different industries. And so think about, why do those logos come to your mind? What is it about that specific symbol that makes you remember it? And then how can you draft something that sticks in people's mind? And the key to it is simplicity, something that's relatively easy to scale down regardless of what size it is. So it can fit on a small sticker, it can fit on their water bottle, it can fit on a hat easily. You don't want it to be too complicated to when you start to shrink it down, it starts to become blurry. And then you want that logo to show up as consistently as you possibly can. So like, for example, it's not a coincidence that the Farm Trader logo is at the top right corner of each of these slides, right? And so it's things like that. The more places that you can place your logo, the more it's going to stick in people's mind and the more comfortable they're going to be with it. And then the simpler it is, the easier it is to get on multiple different types of products. The next piece of this is storytelling. So why is it that your farm matters? What specifically would people care about when they're buying from you? Because the reality is that no matter what it is that we're doing, or no matter how niche that we may be in our specific market, at the end of the day, everything that we offer is one way or another some type of commodity, where there are lots of different ways to get a very similar product in multiple different areas. So like a tomato in North Carolina is not going to be leaps and bounds different than a tomato that's grown in South Carolina. The key difference is, and what people care about, is where they're buying it from and who they're buying it from. And so they care about you and they care about your story. And so tell it in a way that is engaging. If you run a family farm, tell the history of the farm. If it's veteran owned, tell that story and how you got to the place that you are now. If you retired from the corporate world, talk about how you made that change and why what you're doing now is just as important as what you ever did when you were working for a corporate company. And so make people think of you as, you're a human, and they're buying from a human, and they want to be able to engage with that and be able to tell that story themselves when they're talking about the great products that they just bought to other potential customers. And so through your story and your branding, you're able to start to get this network effect surrounding your business where people start talking about it for you. They start telling your story for you. And so the more engaging that story can be, the better and the easier it is, the easier it will be for people to be able to repeat that story. And you'll start getting word of mouth customers, which will greatly expand your marketing reach. And lastly, digital tools. So social media, online marketplace, and your own website. And I have a slide dedicated to like digital marketing presence. And so we'll get into that in more detail in just a little bit. We'll do it right now, actually. So digital marketing strategies. So these fall into several buckets. First and foremost, and like the lowest hanging fruit, is social media. And having a consistent social media presence is something that can provide more bang for your buck than pretty much anything else. It is a way for people to consistently engage with you, with your brand. They're able to get daily updates about what's happening on your farm, what products you're offering, what struggles you're having. And so make this platform as engaging as it possibly can be and update it as frequently as possible. I know we don't all have a lot of time to do this. I struggle with it myself, but being able to consistently post on social media, as you know, I don't like it very much myself, and I know a lot of people don't either. But the reality is that most consumers and the largest portion of the consumer base are highly engaged on these platforms, and you'll be able to have a very captive audience. And so, you can use tools to simplify this process for you, and make this just kind of a part of your weekly routine to create some social media posts and get those in front of people as frequently and as consistently as you possibly can. The next thing that we'll talk about is email marketing. And I think that this is something that is often looked over by a lot of businesses, including like outside of just the farming world. Email marketing is an incredibly effective way for you to consistently stay top of mind with individuals throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the day. Because the reality is a lot of the people that you're selling to they work full time, they have work emails. And if you can get those emails, you're able to have a level of engagement with them that you otherwise would not be able to get in a very crowded place like social media. So like the reality is I would not be sitting here having this conversation with you if it wasn't for our email marketing campaigns. We have focused in on that as one of our primary ways to drive results in our business. And I highly encourage you all to take the steps to create weekly newsletters or monthly newsletters, talk about the products that you're listing. And then if you can get into like a corporate office and start collecting emails there and talking about sales through your corporate relations, you'll wind up being able to create new sales channels for yourself. So one of the stories that I like to tell is one of our partners, the Veterans Farm of NC. He was able to get a connection with somebody in an office building in Raleigh and started sending emails about some of the specials that they were running. And those emails wound up getting forwarded throughout the office building. And all of a sudden, he wound up with a pretty large contract to consistently supply this office building with their food. And so email marketing is a great way to break into new markets. It's a great way to stay top of mind and engage with people where they always are, which is on their computers, checking their emails. And so regardless of how you sell, whether that be at a farmer's market, online, or wholesale, I highly encourage you to collect as many emails as possible through that sales process. So when people check out, they have the option to enter their email, or if you're at a farmer's market, just ask for it and say that we'll send you updates about what's happening on our farm. We'll create a newsletter, and you'll be able to have early access to whatever it is that we're offering. So don't neglect the email side of things, and it's relatively simple and cheap to do. There's options like MailChimp that allow you to automate this process in a lot of ways that make it as simple as possible for you guys to get as much reach as you can. The next thing that we'll talk about is websites. And so as a individual who is operating an online marketplace, one of the questions that I get very frequently is if I'm listing my products on Farm Trader or on Etsy or on Amazon, do I still need a website? And the answer is almost always yes. And the reason for that is because in today's day and age, your website is what your brick and mortar building used to be. It is where people go to learn more about your business, where they go to learn more about your brand, to learn more about your story. As soon as they get any sort of interest in you, one of the first things that they'll do is go to your website or look for your website. And so it's a fairly simple process to set one up through platforms like Wix or Squarespace or Shopify. There are a few options out there that are more tailored for the ag industry, like Barn to Door or Graze Cart. You will pay a little bit more of a premium for those, but they are more tailored for our world, where you're able to set orders in a more consistent way that align more with your business model. But the moral of the story is that this is a fairly simple process that should not be left out of your branding strategy, because of the fact that it is where people gravitate to in order to learn more about you and your business. There's only so much that you can tell through your Facebook page, and your website gives you your own space in order to be able to capture your audience and keep them more engaged with you for a longer amount of time. The last thing that we'll talk about here is online marketplaces. And so the selling through Farm Trader, Etsy, or Amazon, or some other type of marketplace is a fantastic way for you to be able to exponentially expand your reach. And so to bring back in the competition piece, one of the things that happens on the internet is when people search for groceries or for food, it is going to be incredibly difficult for them to find you as a standalone business. And the reason for that is because that you are competing with companies like Walmart, companies like Amazon, companies like Sam's Club, who have a volume and a scale that as a small scale producer, it's going to be impossible to match. And so what do we do to mitigate that? One of the things that we can do is to show up on platforms that act as aggregators for our industry. So when you have hundreds or thousands of farms posting tens of thousands of products on a site, it is much more likely to show up on a Google search. And the reality is that over 60% of all purchases that are made online happen through some sort of marketplace. So this is how customers are used to shopping. And it's something that's kind of been left out for a lot of the ag space and avoided in a lot of ways. But it's how most people buy their products online. And so it would behoove you all to show up in a place that people are already used to shopping, right? Or in a way that they're used to shopping already, where they're able to shop from multiple different vendors and multiple different places and aggregate and order that way. And so the reach that you're able to get through an online marketplace is exponentially more than you could get through any of these other types of strategies, simply because of the volume that you get in being on there. And so for farm traders specifically, where we're a little bit different is, whereas you go on Etsy or Amazon for your products and you see kind of the top selling products of the day, when you go onto Farm Trader, you see the products that are closest to you. And so what we try to do is keep local purchases and local farming in their local communities so that the food's not having to travel as far, so that people are able to be more engaged and you're able to get these long-lasting customers that end up buying from you in ways outside of our marketplace, but they wind up just buying directly from you via your website, email marketing, or coming to see you on your farm. And so it's a great way for you to very cheaply get in front of a ton of people. So now we've made all of these sales. We have a great brand. We have a great story. People are engaged with us. How do we get them coming back? One of the best things that we can possibly do is to offer great service and to show appreciation. And I really want to dive into the appreciation side of this, because the reality is that buying from a small farm or working with a small producer is inherently inconvenient in most ways compared to all of the other options that exist out there. So they don't have to buy from you, they're choosing to. And so it's important that we thank them for that and make them know that the actions that they're taking and the spending their dollars here is doing much more than they think. They're not just buying a product for them. They're sustaining a family farm. They're keeping a community together. They're keeping an important piece of the community intact, and they're keeping food local. And so each and every customer that we have that buys from us should feel special for doing so. And that's a big way that you keep them engaged and you keep them coming back time and time again. Another great way that you can do this is through some sort of loyalty programs. You offer discounts for repeat customers, things of that nature. And then subscriptions like CSAs. Those are a great way to kind of lock in customers for a set amount of time, where they're consistently engaged with you, or consistently getting products from you in a way that they're able to do so easily. And so make sure that once you have done all of the legwork to, get your name out there, get your brand out there, you're able to capitalize on that by having customers come back to you time and time again. And one of the best ways that you can do that is just to tell them thank you. Write a handwritten note or something cheesy like that. It means a lot. And what they're doing is important, and they should be told so. So one of the biggest things that I like to talk about towards the end of these presentations is, we've done all this work, we've made all these sales, we have repeat customers. How do we quantify this to know where our efforts are having the most value? And the way that you can track this is through key performance indicators or KPIs. So things like conversion rates, how many people that you get in front of actually end up buying from you. Your return on investment, how much did you spend on this marketing campaign and how many dollars did that translate into? And then the customer acquisition cost, which is how much do you have to spend per customer for them to actually end up making a purchase. And then when we're talking about customer loyalty, what's the lifetime value of that customer for your business? So over the lifetime of that relationship, on average, how many purchases do they make from you and for how much? And this is a great way for you to kind of keep tabs on your marketing strategy, where it's working, how effective the narrative is that you're telling people, and how much value your products are bringing into the market. Another pretty easy way to track engagement overall and to get some good metrics, it's another reason why websites are so important, is you're able to pretty easily monitor your website traffic. You're able to see how engaged people are, and if you are posting on Facebook, how often do people come from Facebook to your website, or which platform is getting you the most website traffic. And that's a great way for you to kind of narrow down where you're seeing the most results and to focus in on that moving forward. Because the key here is to use your time as efficiently as possible. You don't want to spend your life worrying about marketing tactics. And so the idea here is to get something set up that you're then able to track over time and adjust with micro adjustments based off the results that you're seeing. And so one of the things I would highly encourage you to do is to be pretty analytical when you're building out your marketing campaign. Talk about how many eyes you're getting, how much it cost you, and then where those results are being driven. And you'll be able to much more effectively make changes in the future. And then should market conditions change, you already have an idea of kind of where to adapt and how to do so. And so keeping the metrics kind of top of mind, or in the back of your mind at least, will wind up paying off in the long run. So what can we do next? So I would encourage you all to start small and grow very steadily over this process. I know I just gave you a lot of material that you have to now digest, but the reality is that you don't have to do it all at once, and I would not suggest doing so. Pick 1 to 2 areas where you can apply a little bit of time and focus and energy to really hone in those 1 to 2 things, and then move to the next one. All while you're able to see the metrics after you've set that one up to make sure it's still doing what you expect it to. And if it's not, then stop doing it. I'm not asking you to invest an incredible amount of your time in order to do this, because we are all busy. We all run farms as well, and that takes up a considerable amount of our time. And so one of the things that I like to do is just first thing in the morning, do a quick check of my marketing campaigns, send a few emails, and make a social media post, and go about my day after that. The next morning, I'm able to see what those results were, or check them once a week, and then move on from there. I'm not asking you for this to be your full-time job, as it definitely should not be. But the most important thing that you can do is be consistent. The more, like we talked about multiple times, the more you show up, the easier you are to find, and the more people trust you. So be consistent in everything that you do in these small little steps. And you'll wind up reaping the benefits, as opposed to spending several weeks drafting this robust marketing plan. You'll get a lot more out of just every day doing 1 to 2 small things to get your name out there. I'm going to end you with a couple of resources. So first, we have several books that I would encourage you all to like read or listen to on Audible while you're doing your work throughout your day. And they're not necessarily farm focused, but it's about building businesses and how to adapt your business over time and how to create value where before there was none. So these are all great ways to kind of tap into successes that other people have had in other industries and translate that into some of the work that you're doing now. The How to Win Friends and Influence People book is a great way to think about your narrative and the story that you're telling and what engages people. Um, Down at the bottom right, there's a newsletter from Neil Patel. He sends out weekly newsletters on marketing strategies. And it's a great way just to kind of like get new ideas and to keep this something that is part of your weekly life. And then as much as we all hate it, at the top right, AI, the chat GTP, it's a great way for you to be able to simplify and automate a lot of these processes, be it writing your social media posts, writing your emails, writing or creating a marketing plan. You can ask it to do that for you. There's a lot of tools that exist out there today that can make your time or save you a lot of time so that you're able to focus on what's important. And so use as many of them as you can. Poke around in Chat GPT or any other AI type platform and see where it can save you time. I know that for us, we're an incredibly small team. And so the ability to, have it plan out our email campaigns over a few weeks allows us to be able to focus on things that are much, much more relevant and are able to drive business in a larger way. And then, of course, the shameless plug for Farm Trader down there at the bottom left. It's thefarmtrader.com. Signing up is free. If you all have questions, my contact information will be shared with you all. I'd be more than happy to have conversations with you. And that does it for me. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Rick. We do have a couple questions. So the first one is two parts. So I'll ask the first one and then the second one separately. So what is the process for supplying government programs with this product?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways that you can get into that. One of the most approachable is through the food hubs. A lot of them work with government programs. And so like one of the ones like in Boone, North Carolina, there's the Appalachian Women in Agriculture Food Hub. And they work with a lot of different government food programs to be able to get those sales out there. And so they will do a lot of the work for you. And so I'd encourage you to reach out to any sort of food hubs or just do a quick search of different food programs. Like we work a lot with Second Harvest Food Bank as well. And they are always looking for new suppliers and new farmers, and they struggle finding them. That's one of their biggest issues. And so be proactive and reach out to them, and you will get a response.
The second part is, what is the process for calculating time? I think the value of your time.
Yeah. So, one of the ways that I like to do it is how much time did I spend doing X, Y, or Z task, and how much revenue did that generate? So if, say, for instance, we take 30 minutes and set up a website, and over the course of however many weeks, we get a lot more revenue than we ever could through 3 weekends at a farmer's market, which accounts for a lot more of our time. Where can we be more focused on that? So the way that I like to calculate is how much time did I spend in a certain place doing a certain thing, and then what does that translate into in terms of sales?
Next question is, how does Farm Trader differ from Specs, which is an online platform specialty crop exchange?
Yeah, so they are another great option, and they look at they do a lot more of the wholesale side of things. And so we focus a lot more on the direct consumer type sales. where we are focused on getting products in front of local buyers as opposed to aggregating over an entire region. We want to keep things as local as possible because, like I said before, people are buying your story, they're buying who you are and where you are. And so we want to keep your products in front of those customers.
So if you're a farmer and you're currently selling at a farmer's market and have a social media account, what's the one next thing that you would recommend adding to their marketing plan?
I would recommend collecting emails from your sales at a farmer's market, so that you're able to kind of update them on, where you're going to be at the market. You can maybe offer pre-orders, and then you're able to kind of keep them more engaged and let them know what's going to be there before they show up, so that they are able to kind of plan ahead and make things as convenient for them as possible. Because again, the whole point is to try to remove as many barriers or questions for the customer as possible.
Are platforms like MailChimp set up where you could create a email list and then a QR code to place on a little poster at your table that someone could scan the code, type their email, and it automatically places them in your email list?
Exactly.
I'm trying to ask so you don't have to write them down and type them in later.
Yes, exactly. Yep. There are lots of platforms like that. MailChimp's just one of them, and it's the cheapest. But yes, you can absolutely get a QR code where people can automatically just sign up for it there.
Well, it is 9:30. If we don't have any additional questions, we're going to wrap it up now. But I just want to say thank you, Rick, for joining us today. You've shared a lot of really great things. And everyone that's joined, I hope that you have gotten some valuable insight into maybe one more thing that you can do to better market and sell your crops, to grow that business, because we know that profit is what keeps us going as well. And if you have any additional questions, please do reach out to Rick, or you can reach out to myself. We'll be emailing out a copy, a recording later, along with his contact information. So we're so happy you joined us, and hope you have a great day.
Thank you all so much.